thank you so much, Nadia, for allowing us to take over Women in Control and trusting that we're not going to do a madness. So thank you so thank you so much. I'm Alicia. I'm a talent partner, and I work for a company called Haughton, and they're a talent consultancy. And effectively, we go into businesses and we shape their hiring. We make sure that they're hiring diversely, and we kind of train them, and we kind of help them to expand on how they're working their culture internally. I'm just going to let each of the ladies introduce themselves one at a time. So Bonita, would you like to go first and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So hi guys, I'm Bonita. I'm a content strategist at KPMG. I started my career, first I studied business management at Kingston University, and then a couple of years later went on to do my master's in business management at University of Essex, and started my career off at Apple. I love tech, and then I moved into marketing, and I would say I jumped a bit. We'll get onto that a bit later, but I essentially went from Microsoft advertising to Expedia to AT&T, and now I'm at KPMG. And that's me.
Perfect. Thank you, Bonita. Taj, go next.
Hi everyone, my name is Taj. I am currently a senior HR advisor in a law firm in London at the moment. I've been in my role for been in my company for 2 years at the moment. And I previously worked at a company called Thomson Reuters, which was kind of a news and information company. I really kind of have a passion for HR because I like working with people, and I'm really excited to talk to everyone today. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you so much. And Nadine, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Nadine, and I work as a client development manager for a tech company called Oracle. Similar to Bonita, I definitely have an interest in tech, and I've worked at a variety of different organizations, including Adobe and Axiom. In terms of how I got started, I studied psychology at Brunel University. And then though I did delve into a career in mental health, and it's very rewarding, I just didn't feel like it was financially aligning to my personal goals. As we all know, if you're working in sales, it's about getting that money. And as soon as I was like, hey, sign me up. And I haven't looked back. So definitely looking forward to speaking with you today, sharing more about my experiences in tech, and yeah, roll on the discussions.
Perfect. Thank you, Nadine. And Kelliesha.
Hey guys, so I'm Kelliesha. I'm the brand and cultural impact manager at Depop, which I actually started recently during lockdown, or just before lockdown. I started off my career in creative marketing at M&C Saatchi in sports and entertainment. Then I went off to another creative agency called Urban Nerds. I started off my career after graduating from Brunel University. So I went Brunel Zonadine, where I studied marketing. And then before that, I studied at Fashion Retail Academy, which is like a fashion college in central London. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Kelliesha. I feel like I didn't give a background of myself at all, but I'm going to do that in the next part of this webinar. So just so everyone knows what we're covering, we're going to look at job hunting, so techniques, how to actually go about your search. We're going to look at also the interview process, so when you're interviewing, how to prepare, how to nail an interview, failures, I'll tell a couple of stories, and successes. And then also when you're starting a job, establishing yourself as well and making sure that you're respected, you're heard, and you excel. So just starting off with the job hunting, I'll start off with myself, how I typically get hired. So I can hand on heart tell everyone that I've never been hired through an application, ever. It's always through, all my jobs that I've had has always been through a direct connection, a referral, messaging someone. I have not got a job for application, so clearly I'm not very good at application, which is ironic because I do recruitment. But just to, I guess, give you guys an insight as to how I got for example, my current role. So I was looking for a company specifically that specialised in hiring diverse talent that wanted to have an impact in businesses in that way. So I headhunted a business, and I kind of took the same approach that I would take when I'm looking for candidates. And I made sure that I looked for a business that I want to work with. I researched the founders. I listened to the podcasts that they were on. I read blogs that they read. I researched them because I said to myself, it's enough moving up and down. I need to find somewhere that I want to be long term. So I actually messaged my founder of my current business and just said, hey, I really want to work with you. I think, you know, what you stand for is really good. Let's have a chat, basically. And he was like, okay, cool. And the same, literally, I messaged him maybe 10 a.m. and by 2 p.m. was on the phone. And then I met with his colleagues, conversations led on, and within like 2 weeks, they offered me a role. So that's how I got my previous role. The role before that, to give you context into why networking is so important, because I applied for my last role that I had, say in February, and no, I didn't hear back from them. My friend happened to work at that same company, and in May they referred me. Within like maybe 2 weeks I got hired in the company. So I could have got the job from February, but because I knew someone, they then referred me, basically. So one of the key tips I'll say in job hunting is to look at your network, look at where people are working, and don't be afraid to approach anybody, ask them for tips. People get flattered when you say to someone, oh, you're doing so well, you know, I love to know and see what you did. They get flattered by that, and that's your way of building a connection. And another tip I would give before I ask the questions to the ladies is, as someone that wants to be approached, we're on LinkedIn, as recruiters are on LinkedIn, we keyword search. Make sure that your profile is even better than your CV. Like, you know, make sure that it's creative, it stands out. I look for candidates that on their profile, it just says something different. I'm interested. I don't want to hear, you know, I'm really enthusiastic and, you know, I'm passionate. I don't want to hear the same things over and over again. It gets boring. Give me something new. Give me some, what's the word? Je ne sais quoi? Je ne sais quoi. Give me something when I'm reading your profile. And if you're looking to say, apply for particular sales roles, for example, have those keywords in your LinkedIn profile so I can find you, so that we find you. So those are the two kind of key tips that I'll give initially. And now I'm going to start asking the ladies some questions, get a bit juicy. So cool. So first of all, I'll start with Taj. I would like to know about the most difficult time in your career when it came to job hunting and how you got over it.
I think probably the most difficult time when I was job hunting personally was when I just left uni. And I think it's probably going to be similar for a lot of people who have kind of gone through it, because I came out of uni and I just thought, oh, okay, got my degree, great. Now I'm just going to get a job. And it just didn't happen for a while. You know, I was applying for jobs, I was looking, I wasn't getting interviews, and it was really stressful, and it can be really draining. The first tip I would probably say is when it comes to job hunting, you really have to prioritize it. Because I used to hear everyone say, oh, you know, looking for jobs is like a, you know, full-time job in itself. And you think, oh yeah, of course it is. But it actually is. You have to really dedicate time to it. You have to, you know, structure your days. You need to put time in, specifically, you know, allocate it to job hunting, and just really persevere with it. But I think something that I think I've learned now, like later on in my career, that I probably didn't know then, I think as much as it's important to prioritize time for job hunting and really make sure you do it, I also think you should prioritize time for not job hunting. Because when you're looking for jobs, you know, you're focused, you're looking for jobs, it's the only thing, you know, you eat, sleep and breathe looking for jobs. It can be so draining, and it's hard going. Like, just to be frank, it's really hard going. And I think to be able to ensure that you're putting all of the effort that you need to into your applications and, you know, really putting your best foot forward, you need time away from it. You need to, you know, refresh, recharge, make sure you're well rested, and you're giving, you know, time to yourself away from that, because without that, I think it is difficult to, you know, for a sustained period, still be able to give your best. So that's what I would say as a tip.
That's really, really good advice, Taj, as well. Like, even the whole taking a break, because job hunting can get tiring as well. And then you end up applying for roles that don't even apply for you, like apply to you at all. I've applied for director roles because I was tired. I was like director of marketing, you know, because I just want a job. So yeah, that's a really, really good point as well. I know, Kelliesha, I know that you've recently, I guess, been hired by Depop. Talk to us about the experience during COVID, especially having to job hunt and try to give people advice, I guess, on what they can do.
Yeah, so I actually forgot to mention that I talent manage as well, which is very poor of me. But yeah, so that kind of played a part in it as well, in terms of like having something to keep me busy. But I got made redundant at the end of March or beginning of April. I can't remember now. It seems like so long ago. And it was the first time that I'd been out of work since I was 16. So for me, it was like the weirdest experience ever, because I'm not someone who handles risk very well. Like I like stability. I like to have a job. I've just always been that kind of person. So the first thing I did when I got made redundant, I literally wrote a list of all the creative agencies, all the marketing agencies, all the brands that I wanted to potentially work for. And I tailored my CV and portfolio according to the niche of that agency or that brand. So like, I'm a firm believer of not just having one CV or one portfolio. You have to amend it and adhere it to the company that you're trying to go after. So I wrote a long list out, amended my portfolio, my CV, and I just sent it out to like everyone. Like I went on LinkedIn. I totally agree with you, Alicia. LinkedIn is the one. Yeah, like if you're looking for jobs, like making sure that your profile is like active and up to date is key, because you don't know who's watching on there. Literally just like looking for contacts at agencies, because my background is creative agencies, people who are in positions of being able to hire people, or knowing that, for example, account directors or account managers within creative agencies always look for freelancers within a certain area. So making sure I hit up those people. And then slowly, I started to get responses from people. And then I actually ended up doing some freelance work over lockdown with a creative agency called Creative Nerds. Ended up rebranding their whole company. It was a sick experience, but it made me realize that I was capable of more than what I thought I was. So then from that, a job came up at Depop that just seemed like it was made for me. It was crazy. And again, I amended my portfolio, I amended my CV. When I wrote my cover letter, I tried to connect a lot of my previous experiences to the skill sets that would be needed for this job. So even going far back as when I was 18 working at Nike in retail, I used the experience that I took from that to relate it back to Depop, and even go with my fashion experience at college, you know, going to Fashion Retail Academy and talk about my passion I had for fashion and linking that back to Depop. Even though it's a tech company, fashion is what drives the app, right? So I had to kind of basically connect all the dots from my previous experiences, and just you've got to sell yourself. Like you have to be your biggest spokesperson, right? Because people always forget that the thing that makes you unique is the value that you bring to a company. So never water yourself down for anybody. When you go to an interview, bring 100% of yourself. And if they don't want you, that's not where you're meant to be. So for me, I would say, yeah, like the energy you put out is the energy you get in. So you're going to have to apply for double the jobs, get like half the response, right? But it's important because it's the world. I believe the world like reverses this energy, right? And like you create your own luck. I don't believe in like luck coming out of the air. Like I totally believe that you create your own luck. So my advice for anyone in difficult situations is to like keep persevering, and make sure that you're selling yourself in the best way to these companies.
Do you know, Kelliesha, that was brilliant advice as well. Like honestly, I think one of the key things when I'm speaking to candidates, sometimes I look at a candidate's profile and I'm like, you don't really look right for this job, but let me speak with you. Let me see if you can sell yourself to me. I do that a lot because I'm like, maybe if you were to convince me. And sometimes I'll speak to candidates, I've hired candidates that don't look 100% on paper, but they've sold themselves to me. They've picked out their experience from church, from school, from this and that, and they've made it work. And you know, that's what you have to remember to do as well. So honestly, kudos to you, and well done for your new job as well. And and I'm going to move on to Bonita. What kind of key job hunting techniques would you want to share with everyone as well? Similar to the last one, to be fair.
Yeah, so techniques. So I'm a big culture person. When I walk into a business, I'm not someone that likes to water down my personality. I'm very outspoken, outgoing, and etc. And very quickly, I realized that in my career that the culture of a business impacts a lot, impacts the way that people navigate, how people work, all the way down to diversity. So very quickly for me, I realized that when I was actually looking for jobs, that I wanted to get a feel of the company. And it's not always there's businesses that you may not know people, and there may be businesses that when you speak to someone, they're going to tell you, yeah, it's a perfect place to work. They're not necessarily going to tell you what you want to hear. So I became very obsessed with assessing and analysing companies' values. Because for me, I began to realise that some companies just have that standard, oh, we love to da-da-da, whereas other businesses were very personable, literally let you know, okay, this is what we're doing. They had videos about, you know, their staff and what they were up to. So for me, I really started to analyze businesses based on their websites and the content that they put out there. So I think one technique which is really good is to really gauge the business by going on their websites, going on their social platforms, and yeah, just really getting a feel of, you know, what it's like to work with them. A very good one, a very good tip is Twitter. You know, a lot happens on Twitter, and if you use that search tool the way that you should, you will definitely, you know, pick things up. So I think it's super important to use the social platforms that you have to social listen. And listening basically means going on that platform and, you know, just listening to what people say about that firm, or, you know, if they've worked there, etc. Another technique for me was really being able to, I'd say a tip that I got from a mentor was to note down what you like doing and things that you don't like doing. And once you note down those things that you like and you don't like doing, to really think of, okay, so what role do I want to go in, or those different aspects, where would I thrive and what type of role would I thrive in? And I completely forgot what the test is called, but I took a test that basically told me whether, you know, I was an executive, or whether, like, essentially what my personality was like. And really digging deep into yourself and really being honest with yourself and being like, I do want to work in this, but would I be good at it? Really helped me, because working in media, I started off in the optimization side, which was the numbers side. So I started off in the numbers field before moving over to the creative field. Yes, thank you for popping that in. Yeah, you guys take a look at that link. So it was very interesting for me, because I began to realize that no matter what industry you're in, there's loads of different, let's say, areas, and you shouldn't necessarily think that, okay, I might not be good at music, so I'm not going to go in music. No, there's different spectrums of, you know, music and the different things that you could do within the music industry. So yeah, so essentially gauging the business by understanding its values and how they navigate and work, and also essentially having a deep conversation with yourself, like, what am I good at, what am I not good at, and really looking at roles prior to applying. So essentially apply with intention.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bonita.
No
and
worries.
again, like, even to touch on your point, sometimes looking at what you are good at and what you're not, I feel like being honest with yourself is probably the best thing ever, because you're not going to go into a role expecting, you know, placing expectations for yourself that's unrealistic. And sometimes it's not right now, because I actually applied to be in recruitment. I'll go into that later on, but maybe 2 years before I did, and I was told no by like about 15 companies that recruitment isn't for me. And then 2 years later, I managed to get into it. So also it's about timing too. So that's a really good point. So thank you, Bonita. I'm conscious of time. So Nadine, I'm going to ask you the first question for the next segment, because Nadine is my good friend, everyone, and she aces interviews. This girl is she's fantastic. That's the next section, interviewing. Now, before I kind of, just to tell you how I always approach interviews, I told you about the 15 times that I didn't get hired. In 2016, I was interviewing for like 3 months, and it was horrible. But anyway, what has worked for me in interviewing is take an approach similar to what Bonita said, assessing the company as well. So I would go to interviews with a notepad and pen. I'm ready to question you too, because, you know, I'm making a decision too. No, because, and also the person interviewing you, they're actually really impressed by that. Whenever I interview candidates and they ask me questions, I'm like, oh, you're actually taking your life seriously. You're not just trying to find a job to pay for Nando's. Do you know what I mean? You're actually trying to build a career out of this. So having a notepad, to take down tips and notes. Also researching who you're going to be interviewing with, you know, try to find a common ground. And let me tell you, this is a big tip before I go into answering you a question, Nadine. Read the room. Read the room. If someone is really uptight, don't be I do believe in being your true self, but just read it, because I've I've interviewed candidates before that just didn't read the room at all, and they were on a completely different wavelength to they were talking about completely different things. They weren't listening to the questions. They came ready to pitch me. Just listen and read the room. But anyway, enough of me. Let me ask you, Nadine. So why do you think you've managed to ace all the interviews you've done previously? What key tips would you give to us?
Okay. So I think before even proceeding with an interview or even the job hunt, before I go into the tips, you need to have the mindset of wanting to leave that company. It can't just be an impulsive move. Obviously, there are external factors where you can be made redundant. But in terms of leaving a job, there's a few questions that you need to ask yourself. Usually between 18 to 24 months, you're in a place where you're looking for that career recognition or progression. If you're not getting that, you need to be asking why, and if it's possible to get that within the next 6 to 12 months. If that's not possible, you then need to be asking yourself whether the compensation package aligns with your personal goals. And then if that is not the case, and you feel like you're not being the best that you can be, then it's time to leave. And you should give yourself enough time to look for the right role, which is why it's so important to make sure you're applying for roles that align to your career path and not just applying to everything, just remain focused. So then when you go into that interview room, this is a company that you definitely want to work for, and you're going to 100% give it your all. So the first thing you need to do, to Alicia's point, is research. You can't go to a company and ask them, oh, who's your competitor? They're going to laugh you out the door. You need to be able to know the industry, you need to know the company, you need to know the product, the service, and you also need to know the team and the people that are interviewing you, which is why LinkedIn, Glassdoor for reviews, the website, and all third-party sources detailing the industry and what they're doing is so relevant during that prepping stage. Example being when I was interviewing at Oracle, for instance, during that time, they were bidding to win the TikTok business against Microsoft. Me knowing that, of course, I brought that into the conversation. And I also brought in stuff around the product, because for those who work in marketing, I know there was a few on the call, there's a lot of issues around brand safety at the moment with COVID. So how are the products working to support those specific challenges? And they like the fact that I use my initiative to then answer more focused questions. So that's one thing I think you should nail, the research part. Another thing that I feel like people do so shockingly on is the tell me about yourself question. So just so you're aware, the person who is interviewing you probably makes up their mind within the first 5 minutes. Alicia, correct me if I'm wrong. And during that first 5 minutes, during those first 5 minutes, they're going to say, tell me about yourself. And this is you to sell yourself. If you're not selling yourself, they're going to forget about you. So the way that I approach it is in 3 different ways. So first, talk about your current position, which hopefully is the most relevant. If it's not the most relevant, then talk about your current position, but then highlight skills aligned to that career change that you're looking to pursue, and then provide them with an example. The second category is then focusing on your previous experience. That's when you touch on everything else that brought you to the place that you're at now. And then you close, always be closing. You then outline all those different experience points, all the skills that you picked up along the way, and then align it to the role that you are applying to. By being able to then assign your experience and skills to that role, there's nothing that they can really say in terms of tell me about yourself, because what they really want to know is, are you capable of doing the job? Not about what you're doing on a Saturday with your friends, okay? Yeah, exactly, yeah. And another thing that you also need to do is have your at least 3 or 5 selling points. What I mean by selling points is the points that align to specific aspects of the role that will enable you to look like you're capable of doing the job. And in terms of how that looks like, it's your competency skills. So say, for instance, good communication. I have good communication. Great. What does that mean? You need to then apply it to an example where you've been able to go way beyond what you're capable of doing with a client, for instance, and this resulted in XY revenue growth and the client renewing their contract for a whole year, and then apply it to one of the job requirements within that CV as well. So make sure you're always tying it back to the job description, okay? And then something that I also do, and I know a lot of people might be too hesitant to approach this, but there's always like something niggling when it comes to you being 100% suitable for that job. So in terms of any concerns or any sort of reservations that the employer may have, you need to address that. I'm very blunt and it's worked well for me. So when I'm rounding up in terms of like what I'm talking about, towards the end, I'll say, out of interest, are there any concerns or anything else that you want me to address before we end this call or before we end this meeting? Now, I know some people probably may not like that direct approach. So maybe use an assumptive statement. Oh, I know that I don't have experience in X, Y, and Z. However, I've been able to prove that I've been effective on managing this type of work-related task in this previous role. And this is how I was able to do it. Obviously, they haven't said that they are concerned about it, but you obviously know because as Alicia mentioned, you read the room. And by you being able to do that, it helps them because then they don't feel like they have to ask you any questions. And it's just a bit more, it's just a bit more of an easier way to end the conversation. But I guess when you're working in sales, you need to be quite confident and direct, which is why it works really well for me. And then the last point I want to mention is around the questions. You need to make sure you prepare questions and you are specific to the company and the product. And in terms of how I approach questions, so first I align it to the company vision and specifically where that company is heading and the sort of acquisitions they're making, for instance, because I tend to apply for large corporate companies. The second stage is focusing around the specific team, service or product that you're going to be focusing on. And then it's around the role. So any questions in terms of role expectations, what's required of you, even present your 30, 60, 90-day plan and confirm whether it's okay. That's what I did in my previous interview. I said, this is my plan, what do you think? And they were shocked.
Yes. Yes,
them.
Yes, Nadine, tell them.
And then after that, in terms of the rounding up, you ask them about the competition. Obviously, you're going to be competing with other people, okay? So in terms of the interview process, how many other people are you interviewing? When are you going to make a decision? How do I fare against the other applicants? Just so you can gauge how they perceive you against other people. And then you close. Thank you for your time. Really enjoyed getting to know you. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me directly or via the HR manager who's managing the communications. So those are the main things that I would probably advise in terms of making sure you prep for an interview well. I think one more point that I've noted that I want to know actually is the weakness question. You know, when they ask, oh, what's your like biggest weakness or challenge?
Frick.
Never say a weakness. Don't say, oh, I'm organized and I always miss the train. No, they don't want that. You say a positive that you can look to improve. For example, I'm a people pleaser and sometimes people take advantage of me more work than I should. You don't say that. Oh, well, you can say that. And that's what I've done in examples. But then, you then turn it around and say, so I've now created an internal account plan with specific tasks. I've aligned people to specific tasks so everyone is held accountable of completing those certain projects. So that's why I've been able to use my people-centric approach so that everyone has a collaborative aspect towards work. So you have to turn it around into a positive. And I think that's all I want to share with you today, everyone.
Wow, Nadine, I'm not going to lie. This is why you get jobs. This is why you're always, you know, whenever Nadine's like, I'm interview next week, I'm never saying, you'll be fine. You will be absolutely fine. You gave fantastic advice and I hope everyone can kind of take something from that. Just to ask, I guess, Taj, actually, what mistakes would you say you've made in interviews that you've learned from anyway?
I think probably when I can give an example. So in the beginning of my career, I interviewed at Barclays, and it was for an entry-level role, and I didn't prepare for it as well as I should have done. I didn't really know kind of how to prepare for interviews at the time. So I kind of just went in, you know, had the interview with the interviewer, and I completely bombed it. It was awful. It was terrible. Even looking back, I cringe when I think about it. You know, I was saying lots of things. I was tongue-tied. I didn't, use any of my examples. I didn't use my experiences in the way that I should. And there are a couple of things that I think helped me, and things that I would have done now if I was to have the opportunity again. I would have done it. It's what I do when I apply for roles now. And Nadine did touch upon it. It was around having ready examples. So, you know, it's knowing that when you go into these interviews, you're likely to have to answer competency-based questions. So I developed a document of maybe 5 or 6 examples that I can readily call upon in my mind. And, you know, I would put them in a structure of context, action, and result. So I use that because I think it's the most simple thing for me. And structuring it in that way I find is helpful. Some people use PEE, some people use STAR, but that's what has worked for me. And then working through them and just trying to memorize the examples, but not necessarily memorize, but familiarize myself with the scenarios that I've you know, been through. And I'm making it really clear to say familiarize, because I find if you try to memorize word for word an example, if you lose one word in the sentence, it can really throw you off. Like, it can throw off the whole thing. And that's what happened to me in the interview at Barclays. I forgot one word, and then I was talking about one thing, and then I was talking about, it was having a really clear structure ahead of the meeting and having really clear examples on, and having that working list of examples, because you may go into interview and then you kind of think about something else, and then you build upon that list, so that when you have a lot of interviews that may in maybe a short period of time, you can call upon those examples and they're transferable. I will also say another thing is talking out loud when preparing for interviews. And I know it sounds crazy and you might feel crazy, but there's a massive difference between preparing for interviews and thinking about what you're going to say in your head versus how it's going to come out when you say it. You know, you might pause when you weren't expecting to pause, or you might, like, you know, pronounce a word in a way that you wasn't expecting to pronounce it. And those things can throw you. So I definitely think when you are preparing for your interviews, you're walking and talking through things in your head, say it out loud. If you have anyone in your house that can, you know, test you, that can role play with you, ask them to ask you the questions, because you get used to talking through your answers. You get used to kind of interacting. You get used to personalizing it as well, because I find sometimes you can get so fixated on making sure you say the right thing, you can sound a bit robotic, and nobody wants to hear that. It's not engaging. So to try to make it more personable by just having some time talking through it, and maybe talking through with people that you know, I also think is useful, is a new useful tip. And it's what I would have hopefully liked to have done all those years ago when I applied for Barclays.
It's fine. You're here now, girl. So it's good. Thank you so much, Taj. That was really, really helpful advice. And also, it's not relevant now because we're in a virtual world. But when you go to interviews, I just thought of something really random. Make sure you wear something comfortable that you can walk in, because I've definitely fallen in an interview before wearing heels, and it was very embarrassing. I didn't get the job. So just be comfortable when you go to interviews as well. Just another tip for back into the world. Bonita mentioned, you mentioned that you like to stand out, bring your true, authentic self. How do you find the balance between, I guess, being your true self without, you know, being a true self, and standing out?
Do you know, anyone that's worked with me will let you know I'm my true self at work. Do you know what? Know your stuff. No one wants someone to come up in the room, and it is a weird one, but, you know, being likable is one thing. But if you're likable and people think you don't get work done, people will dislike you very quickly. So I think it's super important to, when you're in the workplace, again, intention, you know. I think there's a difference between being somebody that knows your stuff and being somebody that's just trying to be a brown noser. I've never brown nosed throughout my career. I've sat down with directors and been like, that strategy is crap, you need to rethink it. And they're like, you know, it's really about knowing your stuff. When you speak about being inclusive, I think that's one thing for me. Why I've been able to thrive in my career because of my personality, and I know that. And I think for me, it's about being inclusive and being personable, you know, just allowing people to speak in meetings. I'm somebody that if I know someone's got a good idea or a good point, I push them. I'm like, so-and-so's got a really good thought, like they should share it. So I think when it comes to being in my true self, I'm a born leader. It's interesting because although I'm not yet at leadership level, I like to put other people on, and I do that at work. I'm somebody that likes to, you know, be out there. Yes, I can be quite loud, but I think it's important to know your stuff, because when you're in a room and you're being yourself, but people feel like you don't do your work, I promise you, someone will find some sort of negative about you, unfortunately. But being a Black woman, I'm very aware that, yeah, you know, there's the whole notion of working harder, but I believe in working smart rather than hard. So it's just about, you know, be yourself naturally. When I go into companies, I speak to and I network with people at my level, but I tend to naturally speak to people above me. Whenever I go into spaces, that is what I do. And because of that, it's enabled me to bring my whole self to work, because naturally they gravitate towards you. You get mentor, unprovoked, and they start telling you, speak up in meetings, do this in meetings, do this when you're around other work colleagues, and you begin to realize, oh, do you know what? I can actually bring my whole self to work. So yeah, no, I promise you, I work at KPMG, very corporate. Usually my hair isn't like this. It's like bright ginger. I bring my whole self to work. So yeah.
So on that, you touched on so many good points, Bonita. Thank you so much. And we're going to talk more about establishing yourself at work in a second. But in an interview, you have like a short space of time. So it's like, how do you find that balance between showing, yeah, I'm myself, but I'm also qualified for the job and also standing out? How do you find that in an interview, in that short space of time?
Okay, yeah. So in an interview, being able to show my personality is, for me, it's about body language. You know, how do I sit up? How do I speak? My tonations. For me, interviewing is about psychology. You know, it's about reading the room, you know, looking at people. So I think it's important to, you know, watch your tone, the way that you speak, the way that you hold yourself. And as well as that, you know, really putting out there in a few words, but not too concise, but learn how to be concise with really hitting the nail on the head. And keywords are so important. Yeah, I can say certain words and they'll be like, oh, or what I sometimes do, depend on the industry, is I'll throw in like an acronym. And they'll be like, oh, what does that mean? I'll be like, oh, it's, you know, click-through rate. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, you know, all about our industry. It's so interesting how you can throw certain words and they're like, yep, she's an absolute like master in what we do. So yeah, it's, you know, it's all about, it's so interesting. But when it comes to interviewing, it's a bit like a date, you know, you're trying to impress that person, but at the same time, don't want to talk too much, but, you know, you want to be cool, but, you know, just watch your tone. It doesn't matter if you're a shy person, you know, bring yourself, you know, just focus on the way that you carry yourself. If you see someone smile, you smile. If you notice they're getting a bit serious, you know, get a bit serious, because I have a very serious side too. So yeah, mirror the room, be concise and really use keywords, and sit up and really watch your tone. Make sure it's not just on one level.
Perfect. Thank you, Bonita. Again, brilliant.
No worries.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And I think it'll be interesting to find out from yourself. I know that you were interviewing throughout this pandemic, and you might have had multiple interviews. You touched on it briefly in the job hunting, but a lot of the time I've previously struggled with interviewing, having loads of interviews in a short space of time. How do you prioritize your time for those interviews? How do you mentally get into different pocketbooks, especially if they're back to back in the same day? How do you cope with multiple interviews in a short space of time?
So yeah, I would love to say that I actually had loads of interviews, but I actually didn't. So what kind of happened with me was, like, I don't know if it was because of lockdown, but I just had loads of like one-to-one like intro conversations with people, because when I didn't apply for anything apart from Depop. So everything else I was doing was just like cold emails to specific individuals. So they'd hit me back up and be like, oh, do you want to jump on a Zoom, just have a quick chat? So it was more of a feeler conversation, more so than an interview. But for my Depop job, I had like 7 to 8 interviews. So it was a very intense kind of process. So yeah. But it was more around like speaking to like key stakeholders that I'd be working with, basically. Okay. So it was more on that sort of term. But so that in itself was kind of intense. And I think the way that I prepared for that was basically find it, like when the HR person sent over exactly he was going to be like speaking to me in the interview, I'd go on their LinkedIn, do a little young stalk, you know, look at their job role, find out and try and guess some of the things that they're going to be asking me, because depending on what their department is, you kind of know how you'd be working with them in your role. Yeah. So doing a bit of background research. And then in terms of like headspace and preparing, I'm not going to lie, I did a lot of like listening to like calm music, getting up early in the morning, doing some breathing exercises, just getting my head in a place that was just clear. Because it can become so clouded and you can get so nervous and so stressed out, but you just have to remind yourself, that you're your best self when you're calm and you're at peace and you've given yourself the best platform to perform. So for me, I think the advice for me would be like, just take it in your stride, prepare, because if you don't prepare, you prepare to fail. And just make sure you're familiar with who you're speaking to. Like, it goes, everything that you guys are saying are basically is kind of coming to the conclusion of what I'm saying, is just understand who you're speaking to, read the room, just get yourself in a place where you're calm before you get onto that call. I know someone said, is there any advice for interviewing online? And I would just say, just treat it as if it was in person. Vibes are vibes, regardless if it's in real life or through a screen. People can read you, people can tell when you're nervous, people can tell when you don't know what you're talking about, when you haven't done your research. Just make sure you go to that interview prepared, and that you're willing to give a bit of yourself, like that little bit that makes you unique. You need to talk about that. Your personal cultural experiences is what's going to bring a different perspective to that company, and then what's going to bring value. So was what I would say, to be fair.
Perfect. Thank you, Kelliesha. Just to also add on to that, another thing that might be helpful for online interviewing is filming yourself. So film yourself answering questions, watch it back and critique yourself, because it's hard to kind of gauge how you come across because when you're doing it, if that makes sense. So do that, or practice in the mirror. Another thing that I forgot to mention, whilst you're in an interview, if you get asked a question and you've researched, you've done everything that you can do, you get asked a question that you don't know the answer to, be honest. I've found that by me being honest and be like, do you know what, I actually don't know the answer, or I don't know, I haven't worked in that capacity before, this is why, but I'm open to it, this is what I do know about it. But being honest, because as someone that interviews people 24/7, I know when someone is, BSing. I know, and then that for me throws up the whole conversation, because I don't trust anything you say. So just if there's anything you're not sure about, be honest, be open, be authentic. And I guess the next section, and we're going to get into questions, we have a lot of questions coming through, and it might go slightly after over 7, so just to let you all aware, make you all aware. It's 1:45 now. Anyway, sorry. So next part of this is establishing yourself and also negotiating your salary, right? So you get offered a job. Salary negotiation is something that I found, again, from experience, Black women, or women in general, don't negotiate their salaries as hard as white males. I'm telling you for a fact. They will go in. You're saying to them the role's offering 40. They come in 60. That's what they want, Whereas, I find that women, in particular Black women as well, are much more, I guess, shy and timid. And it was only recently when I was hiring for a role, and the role paid up to 50k, and the lady that I was hiring, she asked for 40. And I told her, I literally offered her the 50k. I said to her, you need to know your worth. Like, you're worth the 50k. So how is it, I guess, let me start with Nadine. I think you might be good at this, salary negotiation and starting a new job. How do you go about negotiating your salary and getting the package you want?
Okay, so Yvonne, I'm going to be a bit slower, yeah? So thanks for the heads up, I know. Okay, so going back to the research, oh gosh, word vomit. Research is important. How you can look to do your research is via Glassdoor, for one, and you can compare average salaries. Or if it's via a recruiter, surely the recruiter will firstly know the salary, but also know how much he's previously placed other candidates for that role. So he can give you an average guide of how much you should be on. And then you should also do via word of mouth too. So if you know someone working for the company has a similar role and you're friendly with them, ask them of the salary that they're on in terms of the range, and that will help you with that guide. The second aspect you need to do is create a spreadsheet. This is what I did. And the spreadsheet allows you to compare what you're currently getting in comparison to what you're being offered. And take into consideration that there's other benefits outside of the salary. For example, for salespeople, you'll get commission. Outside of that, you get medical, dental insurance, you get free gym memberships, you get car bonuses. There's so much other aspects of the compensation package that you need to be looking into. Okay, so once you have that spreadsheet and like, okay, what's the negotiables, what can we not negotiate on, then you can start discussing the salary options with the recruiter. Please note, do not share your salary with the recruiter unless they ask for it, especially if it's an internal recruiter. Reason being,
Nadine, I'm arguing like, tell me your salary.
Specifically for internal recruiters. Reason being, they're only going to give you a slight increase, up to 10 to 20% on average. So tell them what you want rather than what you currently are on. However, if they do ask, especially if it's an external recruiter like Alicia who has your best interests at heart, and obviously tell them. But when you're applying directly to a company, then it makes it a bit better in terms of negotiation to just tell them exactly what you want. And then if you are forced to, highlight the fact that you feel like you're being underpaid against your peers and you want a package that matches what everyone else in your team is on. Okay. And then you need to also establish your value. So during that offer stage, sometimes recruiters don't like the fact that you're interviewing with other companies, especially competitors. So make sure they're aware that, you know, you're highly favored in the market and people are offering quite a lot for you. And that will
even if you're not, just gas it.
Yeah.
I know candidates do this all the time to me.
People don't want to lose talent, especially to the competition. So make sure that they know that, you know, you're a popular option. And then I do think that another thing that you need to focus on is the flexibility aspect. If you're not able to budge on that salary package, then you need to be able to provide additional things to help compensate for that, whether it be a bonus or an increase in the potential OTE that you're able to make, or other factors in terms of incentives to increase your base salary. Just look into all options. Don't just turn down that job if you're not too happy with the salary that you've now managed to negotiate.
I have another tip as well, because in my experience, I've been interviewing for jobs and I have had all the best intentions to negotiate my salary. Like, yeah, you know, I'm not going to take the first offer. Yeah, get into it. They offered me the job and I was just like, yeah, of course, that's great. It's a lot more than I expected, so I just took it. So one thing I would say is, if you are, you know, getting ready to, you know, if you're going to get an offer, don't be afraid to say, okay, can I just take that away? Because at least that will give you time. You can then maybe come off the phone, talk to your friends, I talked to Nadine, just to let you know I talked to her, but talk to your friends and say, okay, what do I say next? What you know, what can I do? Because I do think that just having that space is really helpful, because sometimes you can get caught off guard and you can just accept and then think, oh goodness, I should have negotiated.
Yeah, very true. Someone asked in the chat, sorry, because it's quite relevant for what we're talking about, is would you recommend negotiating a salary for an entry level role? I personally wouldn't, personally. The reason why I would say no is because you probably need them more than they need you. And there's a lot of candidates that are at that level that they can choose from. So don't shoot yourself in the foot. Start off, be humble. When you're established in yourself, when you're established in your career and you've got the experience you need and you are genuinely worth a certain amount, then go for negotiating salary, unless they're really taking the mick. But I remember Foxton's, you know, sorry for, oh my goodness, I mentioned the company's name, sorry. Anyway, so moving on from salary negotiation, let's talk about establishing yourself in an organization. So I know that one of the key things, a key tip that I would give to everybody when you start in an organization is to analyze first. Look at what frustrates everybody. Like, you don't want to piss everyone off. So look at what, you know, and look at what I guess could be improved, what areas of improvement is needed in the business, and where can you help genuinely. But that might take some time for you to analyze. Also establish everybody's position. See who's the person to trust, who's the person not to trust, who's the person that makes the key decisions in certain areas. Who do you need to be allies with? Not in the sense that it's not a war, but when I say allies, having a sponsor in a senior position is key within a business, because when they're having those C-level meetings and your name's brought up, they're backing you and they're going to be talking about you in a great way. You need to have one of those people, and a mentor as well within a business is also very good. It's a bit different to a sponsor. A sponsor is more of an advocate for you, whereas a mentor is someone that more advises you and you can talk to them more day to day. So those are some of the key things that I would advise in starting and establishing yourself in a new job. Because I've taken two different approaches previously. where I've kind of gone in full head in. Yeah, I can do it all. When I was a bit young, I can do it all. I've got this, and I was flopping. I wasn't really doing, the job to the best standards, because I didn't take time to understand what the job entailed, what I need to do. And as time's kind of gone on, I've made sure that I've taken time out to understand that. So, and it's seemed to be beneficial. So, yeah, I guess I'll ask Bonita, you touched on it previously about how you establish yourself well, to get that respect in a role. Is there anything else you'd like to add on to that?
Yeah, so do you know what? 6 years, 5 to 6 years of working, one thing I can tell you is, do not be the person that wants to be liked by everyone. Sadly, in my career, I've watched people that say yes to everything, that don't get promotions, they're just not uplifted. And I think what I've realized in businesses is, if a business feels like they can continuously give you something and you won't ask for more, or you don't push for more, they're not going to push you. Because it's like, why am I going to pay you more if you're more than happy with, with what you've got? So what I would say is work smart. And when I say work smart, it comes down to, if you identify a gap or an issue or a problem, find a solution. It doesn't need to be, a perfect solution, but once you start to notice things in different processes or different systems that you're introduced to, just note it down. If you're working on a project and you face something, note it down. If you work with different people and there was an issue or there was something that really worked well, note it down. Because one thing is, when you come together as a group or as a department, people want to hear your voice. And there might be something wrong, but in a business, you need to provide a solution. People don't like to always be met with, oh, well, that went really shit and this is why. No, you need to be like, okay, and this is how we could potentially fix it. So in regards to, establishing yourself and putting yourself out there, be a problem solver. And it doesn't have to be for big things. And you should never think that, it's too early in your career to do something like that. So I think it's really important to assess, everything that you do. You're never too junior to make a difference. And I think for me, that's what really helped me in my career. I'd identify a problem. Sometimes it does bring a bit more work, sadly. However, always be transparent with your expectations and, how you're working. But when you go into a business, assess things, look at things and be like, oh, we could do this better. Make it a side project. What naturally happens is you then start working with people that aren't in your department, which then helps you when it comes to promotions, to, people knowing your name, and it's essential. So I think it's super important to work smart and, network with people out of your department. That's one thing that I always did. And people would be like, oh, how do you know that person? I'd be like, oh, because this and this and this, So, be somebody that doesn't always say yes to everything. And if it isn't always a yes, be open to as to why, oh, I've got this on, or, I've got to work on XYZ. Never say yes to everything and then prepare yourself for failure, because I've seen it a lot of times. And also, don't be someone that thinks that if I try to, be up people's bums, that it's going to help me. Sadly, it doesn't. A lot of people work for businesses for 10 years and you don't see them get promoted, and they get resentful and bitter. So yeah, don't be that person.
Completely agree with you, Bonita. Like, I've definitely been in situations where in jobs I've been working crazy. Mind you, I still work a lot now, but it's different. but you say yes to everything, and by the end of it, still you don't have that same level of respect that you thought you would. And I think people respect you more when you manage their expectations and when you under promise and over deliver. So excellent advice. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Kelliesha as well, give us some tips. How have you been establishing yourself at Depop virtually as well? Must be a bit difficult.
I'm on mute. I just wanted to add a quick thing about the salary. Yeah, like if you apply for a job and they don't offer you the salary that you may want or think you deserve, but you still want to take the job, ask if they can add something into your contract that says after your probation, like that's 3 months or 6 months, if you can increase your salary based on performance. I've done that a few times and it works. If they really want you, they will put it in the contract. So that's just a quick tip for that. And then establishing myself, a lot of Zoom calls. A lot of Zoom calls, my ears are ringing. I think making sure that you introduce yourself to all the key stakeholders, I'm talking marketing, all the key important people in the company, even if that's the C-suite. Like I have a thing, I feel a bit weird about like people in the C-suite, like the CEOs or like CMOs who don't want to interact with like people below them. It's like, I think that's weird. I think it's important to establish yourself with those sort of people, as you said, having allies and having senior members of staff that can vouch for you. I think it's important to make those connections. So for me, it's been a lot of Zoom calls. I've been taking part in the book club. I've been taking part in Black History Month conversations and panel talks. Like I'm doing all the extracurricular activities basically, because like in an office, you walk past someone, you can go, hi, how you been? You know, you build up morale with someone, but doing it remotely, I've only been to the office once and I've only met my brand team. So I haven't met all the wider team, right? And so I just think, go the extra miles at the beginning. It can be jarring. I'm a bit of a granny. I don't really like to socialize a lot, but it makes a difference, because when you have that meeting with like the product team, for example, when you're in marketing, you can be like, oh, there's Emily from the book club, right? And then you've already put up morale with someone. So I think it's important to just like introduce yourself to as much people as possible. Don't be shy, even if it's just emails to introduce yourself, and making it known why you're there. You know, like I will let everybody know that I bring a different voice to the Depop table. I bring a different perspective. There's no one in the company that comes from my background, and this is why I'm here, right? So just making sure you identify what your differences are with everybody else and what you're there to do and why. And then I think that's kind of how I'm trying to do it. I don't know how well I'm doing yet, but
no, that's brilliant advice. Really, really good advice. And even in regards to, I guess, the Zoom calls, sometimes they can get a lot. Sorry, Katie. Katie's my manager. She's currently in the webinar, so she can hear me saying this, but she knows. but basically, but also another thing that I found to be really helpful, I've actually found that I guess working in lockdown, I've become closer to some of my colleagues. So I'll do like just casual catch-ups with some of my colleagues. We'll have a girl chat just to chat about how life is going. And that actually helps with your relationship with that person, because if, hypothetically speaking, there's something that they do not wrong, but that they need correcting in with the work that they've done, they know that you're coming from a good place and you're not just being, online. Imagine not speaking to anyone at all and then they're just telling you, oh, could you fix this? It's like, okay, right? But if you have an established relationship with them, they're just asking me to do something, if that makes sense. So you're doing well, Kelliesha, from what I hear. Also, Taj, as well, you've, like, from my knowledge, you've established yourself really well at work. You managed to get promotions in both of your jobs, I think. So how have you managed to, I guess, do that? What tips and advice would you give to us?
Okay, I'm going to try and keep it brief because I can see some questions that will be good for us to answer as well. But I think the main thing, just knowing what you do well and then leveraging it. So, for example, I know that I'm quite good at building relationships with people. So, introduce myself to people, being, genuinely interested in them, asking about what they do outside of work, just building connections. I found was really helpful for me personally. But, for example, if you're good at data or, statistics, talk to people, understand kind of what projects are, going on that you could get involved in, that you could show your skills, you can show people what you can do. I think that has helped me to build confidence. And I think it helps people in general, because I think, especially when you're new to roles, a lot of the time it's for you to show people kind of what you're about, what you can do, and just putting yourself in as many situations where you can do that, I found has helped me.
Thank you, Taj. Nadine, you had to do a virtual establishment as well.
Yeah, definitely. I do think, to Kelliesha and Bonita's point, networking is key. I've been very proactive with setting up Zoom meetings, and just in terms of anyone that's interested in more of a leadership career path, I've been quite successful at both Adobe and Oracle at getting myself in the leadership team for the Black Employee Network societies, whether it be Adobe Black Employee Network, EMEA, but at Oracle, it's called Cultural Harmony. And what that gives you the opportunity to do is be the leader in various presentations. Like in my second week, I was presenting to a team of colleagues that I've never met about what we should be doing to improve diversity when it comes to the recruitment process. So if you want to get that recognition, but also get that recognition from a leadership and career progression aspect, then try and be responsible for certain projects outside of your day-to-day activity. But one thing that I also want to note is make sure you do your day-to-day job as well. Obviously, it's all good and well trying to get to know so many people outside of certain teams, but your first 30, 60, 90 days are crucial, which is why it's important to have an account plan, verify that with your manager, and hold them accountable to weekly meetings. At the beginning, because my manager was so busy, we weren't able to have weekly meetings, but I've put those in her diary so that we have those meetings and we work through the topics that we both aligned to in terms of what they want me to do and their expectations. So make sure that your manager's also happy with what you've actually been brought into the business to do for the first place as well.
Excellent advice from all of you ladies. So thank you so much for the advice. We have loads of questions, so I feel like we should just try to answer them as much as we can. We have to prioritize the ones that were pre-sent. So before we were on this webinar, someone sent in a question. How do you know whether you're going to do well in a role? I'm currently in the process of changing careers, and I always worry whether I'll perform well in my next career. Now, my personal advice before I pass this on would be to research what makes someone successful in that particular career path. And when I was switching careers, I remember when I used to work in operations and I switched into sales. I watched every sales video. I read books, how to persuade people, you know, what makes people buy from people. I watched different people kind of sell. I messaged people, asked them questions. If they were like a sales director, how did you become so successful in your career? And when I started the job in sales, I shadowed the top salespeople. I found out what is it that makes them stand out. I didn't have them mentor me per se, but I looked at their techniques and then I've kind of created my own from that as well. So my advice to that person that asked that question, how do you know if you're going to perform well? Look at the skill sets required. Look at like what Bonita said earlier, look at what you genuinely like to do. What are you genuinely good at? Are you going to be good at the job? You know, like be real with yourself, and then kind of work towards it. Do your research, and yeah, that's what I would say. Is there any advice from any of the ladies in regards to that question?
Feedback. Get a mentor in your team, and go through your plans. Obviously, verify those with your manager, but also get your peers to feedback on how you're performing, whether it be a presentation or anything work related. Review it with your colleague, and that's why building that rapport is important. And they can potentially be that advocate to help you towards making sure that you're doing what you should be and adding value. But also remember, at the same time, you may be competing for the same role from a promotion perspective. So they will help you, but at the same time, you are still colleagues if you're at the same level, if that makes sense. So have a mentor within your direct team to help in terms of making sure you're doing the right job, but also have a mentor or sponsor in a different team at a more senior level to be that advocate and help you with that recognition within the company.
Perfect.
So to add to that, first of all, those thoughts, forget them, honestly. So I did my dissertation on imposter syndrome, and women in general, we tend to get very anxious and tend to get very worried about roles that we're like qualified for. So again, you know, all those different things about getting a mentor, sponsorship, have those things in place. But unfortunately, if you don't get that thought out of your head, you can have all those different things and still fail, because unconsciously you are always worried about thinking about, okay, did that person receive me well? Am I doing okay? And that kind of energy is very visible. So I think it's super important to, when you get those thoughts, to kind of understand, why am I getting that? Do I have all these things in place and am I still having those thoughts? So I think you really need to believe in your source a lot of the time, because those feelings don't always happen when you first start a role. It can happen when you're in a business, when you get a promotion, when you're in a room where you don't see people that look like you, or when you want to apply for a new role. So, you know, try to kick those thoughts when they keep creeping up, and when they just don't deserve space in your mind.
Perfect. That's, again, great advice. And the thing is, another thing that I thought about the other day is, we have like a whole lifetime of a career. Like, you can switch it if you want. You can do whatever you want. You know, you can be a lawyer for 10 years and you can switch to being a fireman. I don't know, really, really random, but you can do whatever you want. We have this long life. There's no one that says that you need to do the same thing for 20, 30 years. So just remember that as well. Another thing. Is there any other tips on that question, or can I move on to the next one? Can we move on? Cool. So how did you all get into the careers that you're in now? What was your degree? I'm going to be really, really quick, and then I'll just quickly whiz round. I studied international business at university. The job I was offered was within Hertz as an operations coordinator. That was because I did admin for them, so they just asked me to come back. Then I I'd done cold calling. I sold myself into my next job, and I got a sales job. And then how I got into recruitment was I went to a recruitment agency for them to obviously give me a job. And those who have worked with recruiters before know that they invite you in just to have a conversation with you with no job. So what what happened is I went in thinking I was interviewing for a sales job, which I think they did have one, but then they just asked me to work internally. And this was kind of like a light bulb moment for me, because like 2 jobs before that, I was getting no to all recruitment jobs. Like, so when they said, "Oh, work with us internally, we think you'd be great at recruitment," I was like, really? I mean, I was really excited about that. And like what Bonita said, I really thought about the skill sets required to excel in recruitment. And I'm nosy, so I love listening to people. I love hearing, their stories, what they've got to say. I love interviewing people and being able to kind of connect them with the opportunity. So it was perfect for me. So that's how I kind of got into that. And then I left agency side and kind of went into consultancy because I felt like working with one business at a time was more effective than having loads of businesses that I'm working for in recruitment and not really just working for the money, because I realized that I got a bit, oh, if this candidate can't start on this day, I'm getting angry, when really they have a life and they've got a notice period. So I just needed to be a bit more human, hence why I moved to consultancy. That's my quick do you want to visit around? Bonita, do you want to quickly go through yours?
Yeah, so studied business management at King's University, 2014. I just knew I loved business. I was like, I want to do something broad so it doesn't, just do something broad so I get all the info. That's how I was. I was like, I want to know everything. So I did that, and I started off in health tech. So I started off at Apple, then went into health tech at the advisory board, and then moved over to advertising. So I started working for AOL, and then they acquired Microsoft Advertising. So I worked in Microsoft Advertising, focused on the optimization side of digital advertising, and then got headhunted by Expedia. So worked in their media solutions department. Whilst I was in between Expedia and Microsoft, I got Imposter Syndrome, and I decided to pick up my master's part-time. So whilst I was doing working, I picked up my master's part-time because I felt like I had to always be busy to be successful. Don't do that. And then went to AT&T. After 3 months, I was like, I don't like the energy, I don't like the vibe. So I started working freelance. I did a huge campaign for British Council, traveled to Ghana, and then also did a few stuff for Reebok and Nike on the side. I'm an arts and culture editor at a magazine called Guap. So I did that as well, and then went back into the corporate world just over a year ago, and then went to KPMG. So I've predominantly been working in media advertising and campaign strategy. That's me, yeah.
Well done. I love the story. Thank you. Taj, do you want to go next?
Okay, so I did my degree in psychology. Whilst I did my degree, I did lots of random jobs. So I worked in a library, I also worked in a nightclub, random. Part of my degree, I did 2 placements. They were psychology-based placements. So one was in a drugs and alcohol rehabilitation centre. One was in a counselling service for young people. At that time, I really wanted to stay in psychology, but similarly to Nadine, I soon found out that the money in psychology, especially starting, wasn't that great. And, we got houses to buy and stuff. So I looked into HR because I thought that you could transfer some of the skills that you learn doing things in psychology to HR. So I got my first role in HR. It was called a company called Thomson Reuters. It was an admin role, but it kind of gave me the first insight to HR, and I really liked it. I liked the fact that you could be in a corporate setting, but you could still help people, you could still interact with people, and it was something that I enjoyed. So I did that for 9 months. Then I started looking, and luckily I got promoted in that same company to HR advisor, which was, a lot less admin heavy, because hated admin, still hate admin, will always hate admin. So now doing more advisory stuff. So then again, I wanted to then leave because they weren't paying me enough, and they didn't want to pay me enough. So I looked for another role as an advisor, and luckily I found one in the legal sector, applied for it and got it. And it's been, it's been amazing. It's been challenging. If anyone that's worked in law firms before, it's a different beast, but it's really good, and I'm really enjoying it. And yeah, that's me for now.
Thank you, Taj. And Nadine?
Yes, so similar to Taj, I study psychology. We actually studied together at Brunel University. And I also did 2 placements. One of the placements that I stayed at for quite some time was at the Forensic Media and Secure Unit, the Shapley Clinic in Tooting. And I really enjoyed working there. I really enjoyed working with the patients. But as mentioned, I didn't feel like it was financially rewarding just based on all the hours you put in, which is why I decided to pursue a career in sales. And I initially started off at Foxtons. And that was an interesting experience. There's this process called raiding, basically, where you can go to a different office and then you can sell and let someone else's property. And I had to do that because I was based in Croydon. So I'd have to go to Streatham and Brixton to actually get a property to sell because no one wanted to buy in Croydon at the time, which is obviously different now. So yeah, it came with its challenges. And I decided that afterwards, I would prefer to pursue a career in tech. So I decided to apply for a company called AdPoint for a graduate scheme. And I was actually made redundant after 4 months, and it really ruined my confidence. I had anxiety around interviews. I didn't feel like I'd be able to even pursue a career in tech anymore. But through a friend referral, I was able to get a position at a company called Axiom. And for those who don't know, it's a data company working within the digital marketing industry. And they've recently been acquired by IPG, which is a large agency. And I was just working there, managing agency relationships. And then because I didn't feel like I was being valued financially, because I was the graduate, I was also the youngest in my team. And that seems to be a repeating occurrence these days. I didn't get the respect that I needed. And it was a very male heavy industry as well. For anyone that works in tech, I'm sure you know, it's very male heavy and not that many Black people. So not that many people that look like me. So the fact that I wasn't getting the recognition I needed led me to then apply to Adobe. And I worked at Adobe for some time, 2.5 years, thoroughly enjoyed it. During that time, I was able to get a lot of recognition in terms of developing my personal brand because I was part of the Women's Network. I also helped to lead the Ben Friends Network, which was mainly focused around educating non-Black people on microaggressions and how to support their Black colleagues. However, there came a time where I felt like I wasn't being challenged. And this is my point that I was sharing earlier. When it comes to a time where you feel like you're not passionate about your role, you don't really feel like you're getting that financial jump that you feel like you deserve, and you're questioning whether you can do better, then that's the time to leave. Don't get too comfortable in a role because you've got friends. You need to be able to continue to progress in your career. So that's why I decided to leave Adobe. And just so you know, developing your personal brand is a big thing because I had quite a few people trying to convince me to stay, including the global HR lead based in the USA who never even met me. And he's like, can I have a meeting with you to try and convince you to stay? So, and that was nothing to do with my day-to-day job. That was to do with all the other things that I was doing across the other teams. So that's something that I've learned and quickly taken on board at my new job at Oracle. During the time, actually, I know there was a question around whether you should ask for the same salary during COVID. Yes, you should, because tech companies specifically have money. And you should be asking them exactly what you'd be asking them this time last year, which is what I did. And one thing that definitely helped in terms of my situation is that I was applying for loads of companies. And I actually had 2 other offers at the time when Oracle offered to me. And that helped in terms of sweetening the deal. So now I'm at Oracle. I'm working for a role that I really enjoy, even though it's locked down and I haven't met anyone. Everyone seems to be very welcoming. And yeah, I definitely feel like you should put yourself forward, especially even if you feel like you're not completely capable of doing the job. If you've got a passion behind it, you'll be able to align some sort of experience and skills in that interview round in order to push yourself into that new job spectrum and enable you to progress in your career. But yeah, that's me.
Thank you. Thanks, Naz. Thank you. And Kelliesha, your career.
I'll be quick because I know there's probably a better question that people want to hear from us lot. But would you call it? I studied marketing at Brunel. towards the end of Brunel, I was actually working at Got Magazine as well. I got an internship at MC Saatchi. From there, I met the owner of Urban Nerds and he offered me a job. Then I got made redundant. Then I went freelance. In that, also started doing talent management maybe like a year ago. So I manage a presenter. I'm actually about to sign to a talent management company. So I'm gonna just keep developing people and signing them to big talent management companies. And then I started working at Depop. So yeah.
Perfect, thank you. I feel really bad. I didn't say that I manage Bammy as well. She's a dancer. She's, just in case she's watching, she might be like, this girl didn't mention me. So yeah, but yeah, she's also talent too. Thank you, Kelliesha. Another quick question that was pre-asked, I'll be really quick with this one, is I'm told to be quite pushy with recruiters, but always worry about getting on their nerves. How much contact would you advise making with them? My advice to that question is just ask them. When you have that initial conversation, ask them, I guess, what the expectation should be for communication. How often are we going to communicate? If they set the expectation, you have to just stick with it because their time is their time. But if they say every day and they don't contact you every day, if it's early on in the process, I would advise maybe get the hint. Like, it's not advised that they do that to you, but if they don't contact you and they said they would, maybe one follow-up, but don't keep going on and on because it gets very, very annoying. So what I would say is just set the expectations from the beginning with that. But we're going to go into these questions here live, and I'm going to quickly just call one of you ladies to answer it, to be quick. First one is, how do you prioritize job hunting when you're in a 9-to-5 job and have a side business as well? Taj, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, sure. It's always going to be hard because even when I first started, even when I did uni, I worked 2 jobs, did uni as well. And when I left, I was looking for jobs. I did work 2 and have worked 2 for a while. I think you kind of just have to accept that it's going to be difficult. Accept that you're going to have to really prioritize your time and really give time to it. So whilst you have your 9-to-5, maybe you put maybe an hour or 2 aside after work or in between your side business, the work that you're doing for it, just so that you make sure you get it done. But I think also be kind to yourself, because if you're working 9-to-5, that's probably stressful. You've got a side business, that's probably taking up a lot of time as well. Like, yes, allocate time towards job hunting, but don't burn yourself out, because again, I feel like sometimes we can put so much pressure on ourselves to make sure we're doing everything. We're doing the 9-to-5, we're doing the side business, we want to get a new job. I think sometimes we can put undue pressure on ourselves. So yes, carve out the time, make sure you fit it into your schedule, whether it's once a day, once every other day, whichever works best for you. But also don't burn yourself out, because that's not going to put you in a position to be able to find a job either.
Perfect, thank you, Taj. And the next question by Jenny Yu is, how do I set myself apart in interviews as a fresh graduate? Also, what tips do you have for people who are slightly introverted but still want to express their passion for the role? Bonita, I'm gonna throw this one at you.
So do you know what? When I first started off my career, I was quite shy. So I think what you should do is focus on being you, because even if you are an introvert, you don't necessarily have to be animated like I am. Like, naturally, I'm quite animated. I've accepted that. But, it's about the volume, your body language, you don't have to necessarily be animated, but, are you speaking to them? Are you giving eye contact? So if you're not somebody that's animated, it's all the other cues, speak clearly, know your stuff, eye contact. If you get a bit nervous, move your hands, doing things that, calm you down. I feel like sometimes moving our hands, or, just sitting up or smiling a bit helps. So I think when it comes to introverts, it's about focusing on everything but being animated, because I think that's the huge difference. So yeah, definitely know your stuff. Speak to them, look them in their eyes, let them know, yep, I deserve this role. It's the energy, it's interesting because a lot of introverts that I know are the most paid. It's crazy. So I think don't let it make you think that it won't enable you to excel in interviews. If you know your stuff, you come in the room, you sit up, you smile, give them eye contact. Be warm, yeah, don't worry too much about being animated, because not everyone loves an animated person, and that's the honest truth.
Thank you, Bonita. Really good.
No worries.
And the next by Aisha A. Hi, hope you're well. I graduated last year and had a short-term internship after, but I'm finding the job hunt difficult right now. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong. Crying face, bless you. Are there any specific marketing media companies I should be constantly looking at, or do I need a mentor or something? Nadine or Bonita, I feel like, or Kelliesha, one of you three, because you work in marketing media company. Who wants to take this one?
I'll take it quickly. Oh wait, where's my screen gone in front of me? Okay, yeah, sweet. I would say, you know, when your trail of thought has just gone. I would say, no, I don't think there's any particular like media companies, marketing company that you should be looking for, but I definitely think that you should build out a long list of all the potential companies that you would like to work for, that you aspire to work for, and definitely try and seek out a mentor. There's loads of different like mentorship programs that you can take part in, where you get someone who's more senior in the industry that you're trying to be in, and they can point you in the right direction. I took part in a mentorship program called the Creative Mentor Network, and I got paired up with a mentor who owns her own marketing agency, and she was able to see the things that I wasn't able to see in my journey. Like, she was able to call out where I need to be in 6 months or in a year's time, and they'll be able to help you with your CV and those cover letters and how to approach interviews and how to negotiate costs and stuff like that. So definitely do your research on mentorship programs. Creative Mentorship Network, if you search that on LinkedIn, you'll find them. They do cohorts all the time. You get free membership to Soho House. It's a vibe. So just definitely do your research. But I definitely think having someone who's older than you, or even to someone who's been in the industry that you've been in or want to go into, is important, because it just opens you up to a lot of knowledge that you just wouldn't be exposed to normally, basically. And you're fine, don't worry. The competition is hard right now. It's very competitive. A lot of people are applying for jobs. A lot of people stopped hiring over COVID, and it's now opening up now. So definitely go onto LinkedIn and follow the companies that you want to work for, so that the job posts come up. Just make sure you're being active and just actively seeking some extra curriculum activities as well to prop up your experience.
Perfect. Really good advice. Also, just to add to that as well, Aisha, as an intern, I remember when I worked agency side recruitment, I was always impressed with, I guess, graduates, people in their early careers that had started something themselves or had initiated something themselves. I always find that quite moving. So whether it's that they had their own blog, or they might have their own YouTube channel, or they might have started a small lipstick brand, whatever it is, when you have that experience, especially if you want to go into marketing and media, market something yourself potentially and show that will impress businesses like off the back, especially when you're early in your career. That's another answer. Moving on to the next one. Hi, would it be possible to get some tips on cover letters? Nadine, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, just in terms of the cover letter, so just so you know, obviously the attention span is not great, especially when it comes to HR recruiters looking after those CVs. So you need to make sure that you're identifying your main skill sets and your experiences at the beginning of that cover letter. So make sure you start with a compelling opening statement, which showcases your experience. And then I make sure it then aligns to the role that you are applying to. And then maybe in the middle part, just focus a bit more on your aspirations and your career journey and how that company can fit into that goal. But then at the end, when you're closing, just again, tie it back to how you can add value to that company, and just be confident as well. Just say, looking forward to hearing from you, because you expect to be heard from. You expect them to reach out to you because of the fact that you've given them all the experience that you think is relevant to that specific role. So I guess the main thing to point out from that, because I'm conscious of time, is continue for it to be personalized and tailor it for each company. Do not have a generic cover letter. Make sure that it's aligned to every single role that you're applying to.
Perfect. Thank you, Nadine. Next one, really quickly. How do you best pitch yourself in interviews for a role that you already do next level up, but you don't have the official title? Taj, I think you're good for this one.
Yeah. So I think for, even if you don't have the title, a lot of the time I wouldn't be too stuck on the fact that you don't have the title, because what people care about is whether you have the experience. So if you're already doing the job and you've got examples of where you've done the job, focus on that. Focus on being able to get that across in the interview, because a lot of the time You know, and I think even the fact that you're doing this kind of stuff without the title is impressive. It shows that, you know, you're ambitious. It shows that you push yourself. It shows that, you know, you're committed. So really focus on highlighting the things that really show that you've been working beyond your title, you've been pushing yourself, you've been working probably beyond your pay, you've been going the extra mile, and taking those to the interview situation. And even if you highlight and say, look, you know, I don't have this title, but I've really been passionate about this and I've extended myself and I've done X, Y, and Z, I think anyone interviewing will be impressed by that. And I don't think it would hinder your chances at all that you don't have the title, because you have what's probably more important, which is the experience to back it up. So
perfect. Thank you, Taj. Thank you. Oh, Bonita, was you going to say something?
No, agree.
Okay. Next one is, have you got any advice specifically for Zoom, Google Meet interviews where it's a bit more difficult to connect with the interviewer? Quick tip, make sure your video's on. You'd be surprised how much people don't turn the video on. That helps. And then also try to be obviously in a environment where you can be fully engaged in the conversation and be personable if the person interviewing you gives you that space to be personable. You have to kind of gauge it. So for example, I don't know, I had a call with a stakeholder this week, and I saw her son like running in the background, and then I was like, is it, you know, just asking about her son, how was it at home with him, like how's your day been with him, just asking her questions. She warmed up first time I met her, and we kind of relaxed throughout the whole call. So just be personable, that everyone's in their own environment as well, so try to find a discussion point from there. Next question. Hi ladies, I've recently been made redundant and have taken the opportunity to take a leap into an industry I really want to work in, content creation, writing for corporate companies. Up to this point, I'm a freelance journalist. I have only retail experience. I thought I had made my CV very, very relatable, but I haven't heard back. Wondered if there's any tips. Bonita, I feel like this is your area.
Yeah, so I'm a freelance journo too. So I think, see, the question is more, you haven't heard back and you're wondering if there's an issue. So I think the best thing to do is be open to other people looking at your CV. And I think the world of journalism is very, very competitive. And to be perfectly honest, with a lot of those roles, they don't even look at the CV too tough. It's more the portfolio. You know, what have you worked on? So I think if you've got a CV, that's great, but also work on a portfolio. And that can present, you know, different, you know, maybe work, like different types of work that you've worked on, or let's say different articles that you've written, or different strategies that you've provided for corporate businesses in regards to the content that you've written for them. Because again, content writing, you're actually providing them a map that they didn't necessarily know how to navigate in regards to getting that message across to whoever it is. So I think it's important to have a good looking PDF portfolio that really, or there's other platforms as well that you can use in regards to having a nice, let's say, portfolio. But yeah, have a CV, but also have something that's more interactive, that really allows people to see, like, from a great shot, like, oh, okay, this is what they did for this business, this is what they got up to. So I would kind of try and work on something that highlights the different companies that you've done work for. You know, what kind of topic was it? Was it copywriting? Was it brand strategy? And then linking, let's say, the information or the docs to those different brands, I think will be the best way. Because in the world of journalism, being an editor, I get so many emails and there's so many that I archive. If it doesn't get straight to the point, I don't look. So yeah, really have a doc that straight to the point and really highlights what you've done, and be like, oh, by the way, this is also my CV.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bonita. I'm conscious of time. I know we're half an hour over the end time, and there's a lot of questions. And as much as I'd love to answer all of them, we'll probably be here till like 8:30. So what I would advise is I'm going to share my contact details with you all, and it's up to the rest of the team, to the girls, to do the same. And whoever you think is most suitable to answer the question, just drop a message. I will come back to you as well. Just literally do the subject title, Women in Control, and then I'll answer your question. My email address is ALI. It's probably easy if I just type it in here, actually. I'll type in my email address. My name is Alicia Richardson, so you can find me on LinkedIn. I mean, don't DM me on Instagram. I mean, it's probably LinkedIn because because work is like LinkedIn, Instagram's like fun. So yeah, Instagram, no, Alicia Latoya London if you need to. But yeah, does anyone else want to share their contact details at all?
Yeah, do you know what? I'm actually open to Instagram DMs. I'm super quick on it versus email. So yeah, my @ is Bonita Saf. And yeah, if you want to email me, if it's a lot longer, on my Instagram, you can hit contact email. So yeah, all good.
Perfect. Thank you, Nadine.
Yeah, I'm gonna send through both my work and another email address as well for you guys to reach out to if you have any other questions.
Perfect. And Taj?
Yeah, I put mine in the chat as well. So feel free.
Alicia as well.
Yeah, you can hit me up on LinkedIn DMs, guys. Active on the LinkedIn.
Yeah, perfect. I feel like we need a part 2 at some point next year, but because there's been a lot of questions. But honestly, like, thank you, ladies, so much for your time, taking time out in your evening just to talk about your experiences, give advice. It's been so valuable, and I really appreciate you, ladies, taking time out. And thank you, Nadia, for letting us host this. And thank you to all the participants as well that kind of stayed with us a bit over time and participated, been active in the chat. We really appreciate you, and I hope that we were able to help in some way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you. Bye.